basically, today we're here to speak with Patrick. He's an electrical engineer, and we just want to speak about how it is that you came to become an electrical engineer, what made you follow this path, basically a synopsis of how you came to be in the career that you're in. So maybe one day it could possibly help someone else that would like to do this or is trying to figure out what is it that they want to do. So how did you get here?
Yeah, it's been a long road. I think that part of that, it's really started out me being very interested in, STEM and, being able to excel in mathematics at an early age. I think that kind of steered me into the direction of becoming an engineer. And then, along the way, there were folks that mentored me and helped kind of steer that career path, because the area I grew up in, there wasn't a lot of, good role models, and there weren't a lot of people doing engineering. So at a young age, I didn't even know engineering was a field that you could go to college and make a career out of. So is many baby steps along the way, starting out in middle school and having a math teacher that showed some interest in me, and then then in high school, kind of learning more about what careers and just even having the conversation about going to college. And then once I entered college, then taking the general courses and finding out what courses really were interesting to me, and always steered toward the more technical classes, in mathematics, and then physics, and then moving on to when I got to my major coursework in my junior and senior years of college. I started taking those more technical, electrical engineering courses, and then also I worked my way through college, and so one of the jobs that I had while I was in college was I worked at Motorola, and I was doing some finance work, as temp work and or part-time work, I should say. And when I worked there, I got a taste of what it was to be an engineer. Just even though I was working in the finance area, there were a lot of engineers at the workplace and talking to them. Uh-huh. Wow. Yeah, the phone company, right?
Yeah, I remember Motorola.
Yeah. And they were made satellites too. They had the Iridium satellites that they were doing for networking and telephone communication. So yeah, getting to know some of the engineers there at the workplace and talking to them about what they do, and I just kind of became intriguing that type of work. And so but narrowing it down, there's a lot of engineering fields. You've got civil, mechanical, nuclear, and so I always enjoyed with electronics, and at the time when I took my electrical engineering courses, they were always EEC, so electrical engineering. Yeah, electrical. No, it's fine. Yeah. It's a good question, because when I first started, I didn't what's the CE? I know what the EE is. What's the CE? So it was electrical engineering, computer engineering. So they were kind of wrapped up into one degree program. So you would take some programming courses along with your electrical engineering degree, which that was the great thing about an electrical engineering degree, is it's a very broad engineering background. You take some civil engineering classes, some mechanical engineering classes, material science, and obviously physics and the math, the higher level math courses. But so you get quite a breadth of the engineering disciplines. So that was always intriguing to me. But I really started to gravitate toward kind of image processing, and that's taking in data from video and digital sources, and then processing that information to get additional information out of it to help you, whether it be machine learning or if you're doing it to kind of extract information out. And so that was the area that I concentrated in. And then when I went and got my master's, I did my thesis on some of that work that I was doing. So when I finished my bachelor's, I went and worked for Sandia National Laboratories there in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and while I worked on my master's degree and did some of my research there at the national laboratories to work toward my thesis. So.
Okay, so how many years of school? Well, let's back up a little.
Sure.
Right?
Lots of information.
All right, that was a lot. That was a lot, right? So I want to know what made it so that, what was the spark, right? Because obviously you have to have some kind of knowledge of math, it seems, in order to go in such a career. You have to have some form of aptitude for it. So you said that the teacher is the one who discovered that.
Yeah, so in my my 7th grade year of, my 8th grade year of middle school, we took the state math exam, and I got one of the highest grades. I think the second highest grade in the state. And so,
what state was this?
This is New Mexico. Yeah.
Okay.
And so, from that, my math teacher, she was. She was intrigued by that because, I grew up in a relatively poor area, and we didn't have a lot of resources, so we didn't. In the school I went to, in particular, was not rated very high. But this particular teacher was there teaching, she showed a lot of interest in the students there and tried to take care of them. And so once I did well in that exam, she then asked me if I was interested in going and applying for one of the private schools there in town. And so I, based on her recommendation and the grades I was getting in math, I went and took the test and was admitted to this private school, which was a very expensive private school. It was well beyond anything my family could afford. And but it was need blind, so if you got in, they'd pay for everything. So that kind of started. That was kind of one of the pivotal moments, And once again, the math was just always something that came easy to me. I didn't. I wish I could tell you I went and read this book and I was, all of a sudden I became really good at math. It was nothing like that. It's just fundamentally, I think you just, innate, was fortunate that I had that natural aptitude for math. And then from there, that kind of, once I went to the private school, I think that helped, quite a bit. Once again, it was very fortunate, and luck has a lot to do with it, right? And then opportunity, and recognizing opportunity and taking advantage of opportunity. And so
it's a good thing that teacher saw that in you, because if she didn't see that, chances are maybe it probably would be a whole different, because the education would have been very different, because you probably wouldn't have went to that private school.
Correct, yeah. And I maybe not even gone to college, because at that point I wasn't even thinking about going to college, right? So maybe, who knows? Maybe another opportunity would have presented itself, but it's hard to say. But that was definitely one that I think changed the trajectory of my life, for sure.
Wow, thank the Lord for that.
Yeah.
So, as far as when you got to the school, did you get a mentor, or was there anything like that helped guide you through the way, or what made you say, electrical engineer is something that I would like to consider?
Yeah, so I think that that is one of the nice things about some of these schools, that the private schools, they have resources, and so you have advisors, but they have high school advisors at all schools, right? And I would highly recommend any young person to go spend some time with their high school advisor. Those people are there to help give you some guidance and some direction, and make use of that time. Don't go because you're forced to and spend the 30 minutes a semester, whatever you have to do to go to your guidance counselor. Make some time. I think that they also appreciate that, when students show interest, they want to help those students. But yeah, they're a great resource to help mentor you, guide you. And then from there, I think that did help, open up some of those doors and the possibilities of what I could do with, if you have a gift in something or you have an interest in something, that having that, having that guidance to say, hey, how can you best utilize these tools that you have to be successful? And those are the mentors. They're available. They're readily available to anybody, not just at specific schools. So yes, but absolutely, having a mentor is key. Having a champion in life is always key, whether it be your personal life, whether it be in your education and your job. Having a champion. No one can do it on their own. Everybody has help. and you shouldn't deny that help. Don't try to do it on your own. It's very hard, if not impossible.
How should a person determine what kind of college to go to? I know engineer is something that you definitely need to go to college for.
Mm-hmm.
Some careers I wouldn't necessarily advise, especially with YouTube and stuff. But this particular thing, does it matter in the long run?
Sure, yeah, that's a great question. So I would say that where you go to college, really, you shouldn't put yourself in a crippling amount of debt to go to college. That doesn't make any sense. So trying to go to some very elite college and then taking out so much student loan debt that you'll never be able to pay it back, or it'll hamper your standard of living. I've never, because I went to the university. Well, first year I went to Morehouse College, and that's what I was doing. Right, I was taking on a significant amount of debt.
How much was it to go to Morehouse? Do you remember? Back then?
Yeah, I think maybe $40,000 a year, $40,000 a year, and that was this was back in the '90s, right? And that was a significant amount of money, and I was just bankrolling it with student loans. I had there was no scholarship or anything like that. And I started to realize that I couldn't afford it, as much as I wanted to go to school there and stay there. I was having a great time in Atlanta, it's a great school, it's very prestigious, but it was just too expensive. So then I went back to the University of New Mexico because I could get in-state tuition. And so that was like $5,000.
What? From
Yeah.
40,000 to 5,000?
Yes, right.
Yeah,
Yeah, so a significant difference, right? And so, and what I would say is, yeah, some people are like, oh, well, you got to go to a certain school or you're not going to find a job. Not true. And I've had a very successful career. I mean, and I make as much as other people who I work with side by side, who, folks that went to MIT or, you name the university. I've got people around me that are brilliant people. Don't get me wrong, they're all brilliant. But it doesn't make a difference. It hasn't hampered my career because I went to University of Mexico and other folks went to some Ivy League college. So going to college, though, is the key, right? If anything, it checks a box, that you completed something, right? Because when going to college is to teach you how to learn. It doesn't teach you necessarily all the information because you're always learning throughout life. And so you're never going to have all the information, but it teaches you how to learn, how to find information. And that's what, most employers want to see is that did you go through, did you follow through, did you make the commitment, and then did you finish it?
The importance of gaining connections in social settings with people when you go to school, because I'm sure sometimes some of those people come back to help you, or you end up having ability to help those people whenever they meet up with you again, so to speak.
Sure. So college is a great place to make connections, meet people, but you can do that anywhere, right? And now that we're so interconnected with social media and, conferences, that you can go out and meet people. I think that the key is being able to make an impression on somebody in those opportunities you have and those connections that you can make. So being someone who can feel very comfortable in their own skin and when meeting people and having people feel confident that you are competent. And I would say that's the most important thing. Be confident in what you do, and always show that you can excel and that be your best. So where you went to college isn't as important as when you get into the workforce, is being very confident. People look to you as somebody who knows what they're doing, who always performs, excels. Those are the important skill sets to have.
What would you say are the pros and cons of being an engineer?
I would say the pros of being an engineer is that you'll always have a job. You'll always make decent money. Will you get rich? I mean, some people get rich because they invent something or they start a company. They have an entrepreneurial spirit, but most engineers don't. They're pretty safe. They don't take a lot of risks. But it'll be a great scenario. But if you're looking to be rich, you don't go into engineering thinking you're going to be the next Bill Gates or Steve Jobs, because that's just not typical engineering. But you will never want for employment. You'll be able to afford a house. You'll have a nice standard of living. So, and you'll always have job security.
Where do you see the electrical engineer field going in the future?
You know, we're moving to, there's a lot of, digital engineering that's occurring now. So things are moving more into the virtual space. So we're in the past, if you were an engineer, or in the past as an engineer, you had a lot of hands-on. So you were either in the lab or you were building something. You would design it, and then you would actually go put it together. Now, most of the work that's being done is being done kind of in the virtual space, and making sure that you test it all out virtually before you actually go and cut metal. So I would say the future is that there's going to be a lot more cross-pollination between computer engineering and the other disciplines, whether it be mechanical, electrical, optical, and so you're going to be designing a lot of these things and kind of running it through the models and through some of the tools that then will give you kind of the trade space, so you can optimize before you actually start to build. And so being savvy with the tools and understanding the digital engineering tools for the field that you go into, that's key for the future.
So what would you say a typical day for you is like?
So now I'm a program manager, so I do not, I'm not doing a lot of the hands-on engineering like I used to. So typical day for me is a lot of meetings. And just kind of structuring the work and getting the team the tools they need so they can go be successful, and then communicating with the customer, understanding the expectations, interpreting what they have in their statement of work, to make sure we're executing to it, making sure we stay within budget, that we're meeting the timelines, milestones, and then I think the key to most of it though too is also dealing with all the different personalities, right? So you've got a lot of people who either, for whatever reason, some people are easier to work with, some people are harder. You got to bring these teams together to be successful, because if you have a team that there's a bunch of discontent within the team, they're not going to execute at their best. So day to day, I'm just managing either personalities and relationships. As an engineer, when day to day, I would be more me either in the lab, testing out, hardware, working through troubleshooting, finding, problems, and then trying to solve them. And that's the area I really enjoy, right? I enjoy just when you're just putting everything together and it's always working. That's not really fun, right? It's when you run into the problems. That's when you learn the most, and that's when, you really get to think outside the box and find solutions. I love to find solutions to problems.
So what is the most interesting project, if you can share?
Sure.
That you've been involved with,
So when I first got out of school and I was working at San Diego National Labs, and it was very early on in unmanned vehicles, and so we were doing a lot of autonomous vehicle design and builds, and I think that was the time in my career that I had a lot of fun, because it was just very cutting edge work. And you were doing things that not a lot of people were doing, anywhere. And the work I do now is also, sort of cutting edge, but you don't, there's not much of it that you discuss outside of work. So you have fun, but you don't get to say much. So it's
limited. So do you think that autonomous vehicles will be the future?
I think they are. I mean, we are seeing a lot of it now. Tesla's, in the forefront of that for making it commercially available to the average citizen. And then you've got some of these other Waymo. There's several other companies that are trying to get involved in that. Even now when you fly in a plane, the plane, when you're in flight, is flying itself. The pilot's not there with his hands on the yoke the entire time, right? There's military application where they have, autonomous aerial vehicles that are flying themselves. And the planes now can take off and land on their own. They don't need a man in the loop. It's all done fly by wire. Nope. It is the future. There's no stopping it. We're already there. So you'll just see more and more of it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
How has the industry changed? Right? since, how many years you've been with us now?
Over 20 years. Yeah.
Over 20 years. How has it changed compared to now?
I think a lot of the digital engineering has changed. Things are moving much more quickly than they used to. So you can go run a simulation in the computer and run millions of iterations, whereas before you would try something, you'd troubleshoot it, you'd go back, it didn't work, you'd go make a change and come back, and so it's very serial, and so you could only do so many things to optimize the system, and then you just had to, just based on the amount of time you had, you would say, okay, this is good enough, and you'd move on. Not anymore. I mean, now you can go and run a simulation over the weekend and, like I said, do millions of different iterations of it, and you can find the optimal solution. And so things are just getting better faster, and the technology is changing exponentially. So, I just think about when I was a kid and, how much technology change I saw from the time I was little to, when I was an adult. And music, for instance, right? When I was a kid, we had records and we had like 8 tracks, and that was at cassettes, right? And then, I got to high school, and then, CDs started to become, popular, and then they moved on to MP3s. Now, it's just, everything is digital, right? And you have it at the, you used to have to wait for the album to come out if you wanted to listen to it, and you were waiting, and you hit the store, and then you go try to buy it, and there were not enough, so you couldn't get it, and so you had to, then you go listen for it on the radio, and you try to record it because it's playing on the radio, on your cassette. Not now, and you want to listen to it, you just download it. Like, you can, every song, any song you want to hear at any given moment, where you used to have to wait, and maybe it's going to play on the radio. Maybe we have everything at our whim, it's really interesting, right? We don't have to wait for anything, and then that has benefits and drawbacks.
Yeah.
But yeah,
sometimes I wonder if we can get how much further ahead can we possibly get with the technology that we have now? Sometimes I wonder about that. Are we at the peak of that, or there's much more to go, right?
No, we'll keep. We can't wrap our heads around what the limits are, because the limit just keeps changing, and I think that, and also we don't, we're very poor at futurists, these people who predict where technology is going to go and what's going to be in the future. They're very poor at it. If you go look, some people get some things right, but typically it's just not, you don't have the things. And no one was predicting the impact that things like social media would have had, 20, 30 years ago, because people didn't think anyone would care. What is somebody doing on some TikTok or whatever, like those, and who knows what that next thing will be and what will drive technology. But we have definitely just scratched the surface. There's so much more that we can do and explore, and will continue to evolve.
If somebody is trying to get into electrical engineering, what are some of the key qualities that you think that they should possess or hone in on?
You have to love science and math. I mean, that is just a requirement. So if you don't love it, you probably won't enjoy it, because there's just a lot of it. Troubleshooting, you got to be curious, and you have to have a curious mind. If you have that, you'll be well served as well. Just being willing to try new things and challenge yourself, and be inquisitive, always be inquisitive. That is a key trait to being an engineer. So I think those are kind of the core, characteristics you have to have if you want to go into engineering.
Say a kid like me, right? For example, when I was smaller, I used to take old flashlights, and put them together, put them on my bike, because we're in Jamaica, so it wasn't a lot of light out. But I was horrible at math, very bad. Is there any space for someone like that who's good with their hands figuring things out, but the practical things on paper, not very good?
So I'd say that absolutely, if you wanted to be, and this is the thing, I think people, they conflate the ability to make good money with titles. So we have technicians at our job that make 6-figure salaries that are amazing, and we would not be able to do what we do and create the technology we create without them. And they actually get to do the most fun stuff because they get to be in the lab all the time. So I would say that if school's not for you, or you're not great at the math, but you love doing the hands-on things and you love being around the engineering, you actually get to do the engineering, and you can be a technologist, and get to do all those things without having to go through all the hassle of calculus, Calc 3, and partial differential equations and matrix math, that stuff that may bore some people to death. Yeah.
So there's technical schools to be a technologist? Or?
There's trade schools basically that you go and you just do you learn to do things like soldering, and there's a lot of hands-on, but it's vocational. It's not you're not, and there's some things, some basic stuff that you need to learn, but nonetheless, yeah, you can definitely do that and at a pretty short period of time with very little debt, go in and have a pretty lucrative career.
I wish I knew that when I was younger.
Yeah.
I just wrote a lot of things off because I wasn't good at math.
Right.
Yeah.
No requirement. Yeah.
If you had to redo it again, what else would you have done as far as?
Oh, good question. One of the things I like to argue, so I would think I would have been a pretty good lawyer. But I didn't like to write all the papers, so I wasn't to your point, my strength was not all of the language arts and writing. Although funny, I say that because now I find myself writing a lot. Right, I've out of necessity, I've become very much better at writing. But when I was younger, I hated it. When I was in school, I'd just go do my paper. And some people, it was always amazing to me how quickly they could write like a 5-page paper, just spit it out like in a couple hours. Like, oh, I'm done. I'm like, oh, this is going to take me a long time because I painstakingly each word I'm fighting over. But yeah, law I think would have been interesting, just from several of the different aspects of, I do believe in kind of fundamental morals and justice and trying to understand what equity looks like and creating equity within the legal system. So I think that would have been fascinating. Psychology also was very intriguing to me, but not a lot of money in that. That's a tough field to go into. You have to do it for the love. I needed money. I didn't grow up with money, so.
I did the same thing when I started school. But I didn't ever want to go to college, really.
Mm-hmm.
But I went to technical school, computer career center, to learn to be a network administrator.
Mm-hmm.
Did that for a while. Did not like it at all,
mm-hmm.
right? Because I was working with this guy from a company, and he was very, very smart guy, very smart. And sometimes when you're around very smart people, and you are not to their aptitude,
mm-hmm.
I think it's a conflict
mm-hmm.
many times. And I saw that. As young as I was probably 19 years old, and I saw it was going to be a problem because he was, you don't know how to figure it. The technical stuff I had, but the stuff that he was doing, the computer programming and stuff like that,
mm-hmm.
I wasn't very good at it. And then I went to become a, what do you call it, a physical therapist.
Oh.
Right?
Uh-huh.
And then that was too hard
mm-hmm.
because of math again.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then I downgraded to occupational therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And that was way too much writing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to psychology. And then that wasn't enough money.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just got a job.
Yep.
It worked out pretty good for me.
Yes.
In my situation.
And I'd say that college is not the end all. And there's a lot of people who have very successful careers and didn't go to college or dropped out of college. And so, the only thing that college provides you, I would say, the main thing that college provides you is options. And that if you can have some latitude in what you do, and you can if you don't like your job, you can go somewhere else and do some other thing that gives you those options. Whereas, sometimes you can be very successful and not having gone to college, but you might be locked into that thing,
Yeah.
So
I think something to consider is, like you said, the options. Being an electrical engineer, you're in demand,
mm-hmm.
right? Not just in Colorado,
Right.
but all over the world.
Right.
Right? So if you want to go and live in Aruba or something, you
Right.
can just technically move and go to Aruba, and it's not like my career where you say, oh, you know, you're not going to get paid doing what you're doing here in Aruba or wherever it is you want to go to.
Mm.
The options are there. And that's something that I didn't think about when I was younger. Maybe if I did think about it that way, maybe I would have finished something.
Yep.
Maybe not psychology,
Right.
but I would have finished something. I would have
Right.
been more focused on finishing just to have the options at the end.
Yep.
But I wasn't thinking about it. I wasn't thinking that far, bro.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking that far.
It's hard.
Like I say, thank you for showing up and giving us these gems, so to speak, the information. Hopefully, it's something that will be beneficial to someone someday.
Yeah. I hope
So
so.
appreciate you being here.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. Enjoy. Yeah, like, subscribe, all that good stuff.
Who's it?